Letters from my father never left our house. I learned that truth far too late. When I was 6, I sat at our kitchen table in a small Midwestern town and believed every word on a pale blue card. "Happy birthday, my little princess," wrote a man I had never seen. "We'll see each other very soon." Inside the envelope were a flimsy piece of paper, $5, and the scent of something familiar. My mom, Mary, smiled as she watched me drink in the lines. I didn't yet realize that there was more than joy hiding in her eyes. Every year the story repeated itself. A letter arrived right on time, the handwriting was neat and elegant, as if drawn with a ruler. Inside were short notes about how Dad missed me, how he was working for us, how he dreamed of hugging me. But behind the care there was always the same promise: next year. That next year became my childhood incantation. I fell asleep pressing the letters to my chest, whispering into the darkness, "Dad, please come soon." The neighborhood kids saw their fathers every morning. They went fishing with them, argued about grades, listened to funny stories. I sat on the windowsill and watched the road, hoping to see a silhouette that never appeared. Sometimes a shadow darted past our fence, just the mailman dropping a letter into the box. I would run to the gate as if I could grab my dad's hand. My heart pounded, but the gate never opened. As I grew older, small details began to bother me. The letters always smelled like Mom's perfume. When I tried writing a reply, Mom insisted on taking it herself. "It needs to get there quickly, I'll take it to the post." She'd return with red eyes, saying the line was long. Once, I overheard our neighbors whisper, "Poor girl, still waiting." I took a step toward them and the conversation stopped immediately. At school the teacher asked us to draw our family. I drew Mom, myself, and an empty chair. The picture caused whispers in class, and I clenched my fists. At home I asked, "Mom, why doesn't Dad ever come? Does he love me?" Mom hugged me tightly and said in a strained voice, "He loves you, he just can't. It's more complicated than you think. You'll understand everything, but not yet." Adolescence mixed my childhood fantasies with new, sharper questions. The letters kept arriving on schedule, but now I noticed things that passed me by before. The paper was always the same, the envelopes always smelled like Mary's perfume, and the handwriting was flawlessly even, as if time and fatigue didn't exist. I was growing, yet the words stayed the same, as if the writer were stuck in time, never asking me anything. "I'll be back soon, just wait a little longer." That little longer stretched on for years. One summer break I volunteered at our town's post office. I wanted to see how letters traveled and, if I'm honest, to spot a familiar envelope among the stacks. I sorted cards and parcels, but not one letter from my dad passed through. I sighed in disappointment. Maybe he was sending them from far away, I thought. Later I noticed that Mom went to the post office not during regular hours but late at night. "It's easier to drop by when the postman's home," she explained. That unsettled me. At school rumors began to surface. A classmate whose mother worked at a store whispered, "Your dad is dead, everyone knows except you." I lunged at him, fists flying. That night I demanded of Mary, "Tell me it's a lie." She turned pale and told the same story, working in a distant city, trouble traveling. I wanted to believe her, but the boy's word stuck like a splinter. That summer I tried calling the mysterious factory where my father supposedly worked. I found a number in an old directory and dialed with trembling fingers. A woman answered, "No one by that name has worked here for years." My heart dropped. I hung up and wandered through the house in a fog. I wanted to throw out all the letters, proof of my naivete, but something stopped me. "You must have dialed wrong," Mary said when I told her. She promised again, "Next year you'll know everything." One night I woke to a rustling in the kitchen. I crept downstairs and saw Mary under the lamplight, writing on blue paper. She was drawing familiar loops, carefully sticking a stamp. My heart leapt into my throat. I froze in the doorway. She looked up, saw my shadow, and quickly covered the letter with her hand. "It's late, go to bed," she whispered. "We'll talk in the morning." But the morning conversation never happened. Mary acted as if nothing had occurred, and I kept silent, afraid to hear answers I didn't think I was ready for. The internal protest grew. I started keeping a journal, writing down everything that bothered me, the handwriting, Mary's strange behavior, rumors. I decided that if truth existed, I would find it myself. I promised, I will find my father, no matter the cost. At 18 I left for college in another state. A new life, new people, lectures late into the night. Yet every November 14th the postman brought a pale blue envelope. I would put aside my books, brew tea, sit on the windowsill, and read as if I were a child again. I'm proud of you, daughter. I know how hard it is to be on your own, but you're strong. In a year we'll be together. Again, in a year. Those promises now grated. I clenched the letter and whispered, when? At college I met Ethan. We worked on projects together, skipped classes, and laughed until we cried. He became my first real friend and, later, the man I wanted to build a future with. Ethan saw how carefully I arranged my letters, how I broke down when I noticed familiar loops matching Mary's script, and one day he asked, "Why do you still believe? Doesn't it seem strange that your dad writes the same things?" I flared up like a child, because it's my only connection. Because I can't just throw away a part of myself. And realized, I didn't believe myself anymore. A year later Ethan proposed. The ring on our dorm kitchen table brought tears of joy mixed with panic. How would I explain my father's absence at the wedding? We drove back to my hometown to share the news. Mary hugged us and happily agreed, but when we mentioned inviting Dad, she clenched her hands. "He will definitely come," she said. "I'll tell him, he'll try." Ethan looked at her with distrust, but I stopped his gaze. Shame and fear tangled inside me. Preparing the wedding became another circle of hell. I sewed my dress, chose flowers, wrote guest lists, and constantly glanced at the door. Every knock made my heart stop. On the day, we placed an empty chair beside Mary, my father's seat. Guests asked, "Where's the father of the bride?" I smiled and gave neutral answers. Mary sat twisting her napkin, eyes averted. The ceremony ended, and the chair remained empty. That night, still in my lace dress, I sat across from Mary and said, "That was the last straw. Either you tell me the truth, or I walk away." She cried, a sound of someone carrying an unbearable burden. She took my hand. "I can't." "I promised," I interrupted her. "Promised who?" "Dad?" "Yourself?" "Me?" For a moment I thought she'd reveal it all. Her lips trembled, she opened her mouth, then closed it, stood, and went to her bedroom. The door shut. I was left in the dark, in my wedding dress, alone with my hatred of this lie. That evening I decided, no more patience. I took all the letters and hid them deeper, in a suitcase I'd take back to school. I would find my father's trace, even if I had to turn the country upside down. As the train pulled away, Mary stood on the platform, panic in her eyes. She tried to shout something, but the train moved, and her words dissolved. What was she going to say? The question still hangs in the air. Life in our new city swept me up in bills and bus schedules, but the mystery gnawed at me. Ethan tried to be supportive. "We can live without this, we're our own family." Yet every morning, while he slept, I pulled out the suitcase and sifted through the letters, searching for a clue. There were no return addresses, only postmarks from my hometown. That meant one thing, the letters had never been mailed from elsewhere. I turned detective. I called every business Mary had mentioned. No one had heard of Andrew. I wrote to a TV show that reunited families. The producer said I should talk to my mother. I wanted to scream, I tried. One day I drove to the distant industrial town where Dad supposedly worked. Rusted factories, empty streets, endless smokestacks. I showed a faded photo of Andrew holding Mary's hand to guards at factory gates. One squinted, shook his head, "Never seen him." People come and go. Maybe check the archives? The factory archives had no record of Andrew in 30 years. Hope faded, anger grew. I'd been lied to, but why? Back home, I mapped everything connected to the letters: the post office, Mary's friend's house, the grocery store where she lingered after sending mail. My late-night detective work revealed something eerie: all points were within 1 block. It was ridiculous and terrifying. In the middle of autumn, I returned to our old house unannounced. I opened the wardrobe and found emptiness. The suitcase of letters was gone. I searched everywhere, no envelopes. Mary greeted me as if nothing was wrong. "You should have told me you were coming, I'd have baked a pie." "Where are my letters?" I demanded. She smiled. "What letters?" She knew that I knew, and she was playing the game to the end. I drove back furious. Weeks passed in silence. I'd lost the tangible link to my past, but a new determination took root. A month later, just when I began to think it was madness, a pale blue envelope appeared in our new mailbox. But the handwriting was different. Inside was a single line: "Stop digging, you won't like what you find." An unfamiliar hand. A threat or a warning? My heart froze. Someone besides Mary knew everything. And they didn't want me to know. The note hit me like ice water. I sat in the kitchen, turning the envelope, trying to guess who sent it. The postmark was again from my hometown, but the script wasn't Mary's. Ethan suggested taking it to the police, but how could I prove that someone seriously wanted me to forget? I tucked the envelope into a drawer, but it felt like an invisible hand at my throat. I went to the post office and tried to find out who sent it. The clerk shrugged. "We don't track that. Ask your mother." Those words sounded like mockery. But I went back to Mary's apartment. I banged on the door until it shook. She opened, looking exhausted. I held out the envelope. She read the note. Fear flickered across her face. "It wasn't me," she whispered. "Someone else." "Who?" I cut her off. "Who knows our secret?" She dropped her eyes. "It wasn't me." Dead end. I decided to dig elsewhere. In old albums I found photos I'd overlooked. On the third page was an odd picture: Mary, visibly pregnant, sitting on a bench. Beside her sat a tall man with striking pale eyes. It wasn't Andrew. On the back someone had written, "Summer '85. That M didn't fit Andrew's name. I didn't even know Dad's real name. Mary used only pet names. My gut twisted. What if the man I called Dad wasn't my biological father? I slipped the photo into my pocket and drove to Grandma's house. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and dried herbs. Grandma was reserved but loved company. Over tea I asked, "Grandma, do you remember who Mom was seeing before Andrew?" She went quiet, stared out the window. "Your mom was impulsive," she finally said. "Some guys came and went. Then she met Andrew and ran off with him, despite our advice. And then, the accident." She stopped. "What accident?" I leaned forward. "Car crash," Grandma whispered. "You were still in her belly." "It's an old story, don't stir it up." A shiver ran through me. Car crash. It confirmed rumors. But who was the man in the photo? I drove home with a heavier heart. That night I spread the photo on the table and studied every detail. Ethan tried to distract me, but I couldn't eat or sleep. At 2 a.m. someone knocked. I jumped. On the doorstep stood an elderly man with a cane. His eyes were as pale as the man in the photo. "Are you Olivia?" he asked, using my family nickname. I nodded, unable to speak. "We need to talk about your father," he said. "Your real father." The man resembled someone out of the faded photo: gray hair, cane, a slight stoop, piercingly pale eyes. I invited him in. We sat on the couch as he studied the pictures on my wall. "My name is Michael," he began. "I was Andrew's best friend." He paused. "The man you thought was your father." My breath caught. Michael spoke of youth, of working alongside Andrew. "He was a brave, kind man," Michael said. "But fate was cruel to him." I waited for the one answer I needed. He died in an accident, he whispered. It happened a few months before you were born. Your mom was pregnant, but she didn't know it yet. She suffered 2 blows, losing her husband and carrying a child he'd never meet. So he's dead, I whispered. But why did she write letters in his name? Why are you here? Michael shook his head. Because she asked me. In her last letter she wrote, if Olivia ever comes to you, tell her the truth, but not all of it. I don't know why she said that. Maybe she thought you couldn't handle everything at once. But I know she loved you so much she'd do anything so you'd feel your father was near. Then who wrote the stop digging note? I asked, showing him the envelope. Michael frowned. It wasn't me. I don't know who did. But some people don't like you unraveling this story. There are things some folks don't want out. He fell silent, weighing his words. Is there something else I don't know? I asked. He sighed heavily. Possibly. But it's not my secret. I'm to give you this. He handed me a brown envelope. Open it when you're ready. He stood to leave. Wait. Who was the man in the photo with Mom? Who was she with before Andrew? Michael froze. For a moment I thought he'd tell me everything. But he said, you have to find that out yourself. Not every truth makes life easier. Sometimes it destroys. The door closed behind him, leaving me with the brown envelope. I stared at it, fingers itching to tear it open. Fear and curiosity wrestled inside me. Ethan entered, saw my state, and quietly left me alone. I closed my eyes, inhaled, and placed the envelope back on the table. Tomorrow, I whispered. I didn't sleep. Michael's words haunted me. It's not my secret. What else was my family hiding? And who had written that note? Answers were so close, yet so far. Morning dawned gray. The envelope still sat like a bomb. I opened it. Inside were several pages in Mary's hand. Olivia, if you're reading this, I can't tell you in person. Believe me, if I could, I'd do everything differently. She wrote that she feared I would grow up bitter and alone, so she gave me an illusion of a father instead of a void. She described how she spent nights crafting letters, trying to preserve Andrew's style. I wrote them pretending he was alive, she admitted. It was my way of staying sane. Then her tone shifted, but I kept something from you and everyone. The man you called Dad was not your biological father. A few months before Andrew and I married, we fought constantly. I was on the edge. That's when a man with ice-colored eyes appeared. His name was Michael, and that was our sin. He saved me from despair. But then the car crash happened, and Andrew died. I was pregnant but didn't know whose child I carried. Michael disappeared like a ghost. I didn't know what to do. I chose to live in a past where Andrew was the perfect husband and father. I paid for that. I know you will come to the truth anyway. So I ask, find Michael. Only he can answer questions I have no right to answer. And be careful, not everyone wants you to know the truth. My hand shook. At the end Mary wrote, I know I'm shattering your belief, but it's the only chance to be free. I love you more than life. Forgive me. So Michael could be my real father. Or he knew who was. And if Mom had already mentioned him, why did she ask me to seek him, when I had met a man calling himself Michael? Was he lying? I tried calling the number on his card. Out of service. I remembered the photo. The eyes of the man on the bench were as pale as those of the elderly Michael. Are they the same? The letter contained a thin strip of paper I hadn't noticed. On it, Mary had written, if you can't find Michael, look for the house with 3 windows on Old Mill Lane. They know where the truth is. A clue. I put on my coat, told Ethan nothing, and drove across town. Old Mill Lane was a forgotten street on the edge of town. Weathered wooden houses sagged under the weight of years. I found a house with 3 windows. It looked empty. I knocked. Silence. I was about to leave when I heard floorboards creak. The door opened a crack, and a wrinkled hand emerged. "Who are you looking for?" a horsewoman asked. "The truth," I answered. The door swung wider. I stepped inside, not knowing what awaited me. Inside, the house smelled of kerosene and ancient wood. In a dim kitchen stood a thin elderly woman with sharp features. She squinted at me. "So you're Olivia? I recognized you right away." "Spitting image of Mary," she rasped. I froze. How did she know? We sat at the table. She introduced herself as Mrs. Margaret. "I lived next door when it all happened," she began before I could speak. "I saw your mom. I saw Andrew. I saw more than you'll hear from anyone." I listened, hardly breathing. Mrs. Margaret described that winter night. Andrew came home drunk, shouting that the baby wasn't his. They argued in the hallway. Your mom ran to us, white as a sheet, begging us to call the police. But no one had time. He jumped into his old Pontiac and, at high speed, slammed into a pole. They said the brakes failed. I don't believe it. He was too angry to hit the brakes. He knew the baby might not be his? I asked. She nodded. Rumors were everywhere. Mary cried on my shoulder. She said she'd had a brief affair with a man she called my savior. She never said his name. He vanished like a shadow. I urged her to leave, but she stayed. After Andrew died, she shut herself off. I only saw her writing at the kitchen table at night, but I didn't know what it was then. Did you write the stop digging note? I blurted. She shook her head. No, but I know who could. Andrew's brother Sam. He didn't want you to know. He thought the family's memory should remain as it was. He always watched Mary, said she was tarnishing the name. He argued with Michael, though I don't know why. And there's more. She hesitated. I leaned in. Andrew had a secret only Mary and Sam knew. Maybe that's why Sam fears the truth. I heard them argue about money and papers. Then I saw Mary and Sam at the courthouse where wills are kept. The words hit me like a wave. Money? Documents? What secret? I whispered. I don't know, honey, Mrs. Margaret sighed. But I know this, Sam has the answers. He lives across from the cemetery at number 17. But be careful. He's hard. If he wrote that note, he'll warn you again. He doesn't like his past disturbed. I thanked her and stepped into falling snow. I found the house, old gray gates, number 17. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. After a minute a lock clicked and a man in his 50s with hard eyes peeked out. Who are you? He asked roughly. I'm Mary's daughter. I need to talk about Andrew, I blurted. He blanched. Go away, he said. You don't need to be here. He slammed the door. I stood there, snowflakes catching in my hair, realizing I had just met the man who held all the answers, and that I'd have to pry that door open, or the truth would stay locked behind it. Snowflakes melted on my cheeks as I stared at Sam's slammed door. Turning away felt like surrender. So I did what any stubborn daughter would do, I waited. I paced up and down the street until dusk painted the sky purple. Finally the porch light flickered on. I strode up and knocked again, harder. Go away, Olivia, Sam's voice called from behind the wood. You're not wanted here. You wrote that note, I said, loud enough to carry. You told me to stop digging. Why? What are you hiding? Silence. Then the door opened a crack. His hard eyes peered at me. Fine, he snapped. 5 minutes. No more. He let me in. Sam's living room smelled of old cigarette smoke and regret. Dust lay thick on framed photos. One showed Andrew and Sam as boys, grinning with fishing poles. Another showed Mary, younger, smiling uncertainly. Sam caught me looking. We were kids once too, he muttered. He sank into a faded armchair. So, you want the truth? It ain't pretty. He didn't dance around it. Andrew was no saint, he said. He drank. He hit Mary. He'd come home and accuse her of things, some of which were true. He snorted. She did step out with someone. I don't know who. She told me once she thought she loved him. Then one night Andrew came home raging about a baby that wasn't his. Mary tried to leave. He grabbed her. There was a struggle at the top of the stairs. He fell. Hit his head. Dead. Mary screamed. I ran over. Saw him at the bottom with his neck twisted. We panicked. My breath came short. You staged the car crash. He nodded. We pushed Andrew's body into his Pontiac, rolled it down the hill, and sent it into the old oak on Main Street. We thought we'd protect Mary, the baby, the family name. Insurance paid. No cops asked questions. Everyone believed it. We buried Andrew with his secret. Mary swore she'd never tell you. I swore I'd keep her secret. That's why I wrote the letter. You start stirring this up, and you risk dragging your mom's name through the mud. She's gone. Let her rest. What about Michael? I whispered. Sam's eyes narrowed. Michael, he spat. That coward. He's the one Mary fell for. He promised to take her away. Then he vanished. Showed up years later with a cane and a sanctimonious speech about loyalty. He calls himself Andrew's friend, but he's the one who broke Mary's heart and left her alone to deal with Andrew. If you're looking for him, I can't help. He lives under another name now, out near Ash Grove. Here. Sam rummaged through a drawer and tossed me a scrap of paper with an address. Go there if you must. But don't come crying to me if it ruins you. And the money and documents Mrs. Margaret mentioned? I pressed. Sam's jaw tightened. Andrew had savings. Bonds. He hid them. Mary and I never found them. Maybe Michael knows. Maybe they're gone. Or maybe the note meant something else. I can't help you there. I stood, clutching the address. Why now? I asked. Why tell me? Because you'd keep knocking until you beat the door down, he sighed. And because, maybe it's time someone knew the whole damn mess. But remember, truths don't just set you free. They bind you to consequences. Your mom did what she did to protect you. Don't forget that. Outside, the snow had stopped. I stared at the scrap of paper. An address in a rural county. Ethan called when I got home. Where are you? He asked. I told him everything. He wanted me to drop it, to stay home, to let the ghosts rest. But ghosts don't rest unless you lay them to bed. The next morning, I got in the car and drove toward Ash Grove, toward a house where a man with ice eyes might finally answer the questions that had haunted my life. As the miles passed and the trees grew taller, I wondered, would the truth heal me, or break me entirely? The road to Ash Grove was longer than I expected. The closer I got to the address Sam had given me, the harder my heart pounded. A small wooden house stood on the outskirts, hidden behind an old plane tree. I knocked. The door was opened by the same man with icy eyes, but without a cane. He looked at me as if he were seeing a ghost. I knew you'd come, he said, inviting me in and pouring tea as if we were old friends. Only after we sat did he speak. My real name is Michael. Not just Andrew's friend, I'm the one your mother wrote about. He told me how he and Mary met at a dance when she and Andrew were fighting. A brief, bright affair flared between them, and then he ran away, afraid of responsibility. He knew Mary was pregnant but couldn't bring himself to stay. After the crash, he wanted to return, but saw that Sam and Mary had hidden the truth. He deemed himself unworthy and disappeared, watching from afar. The letter he delivered was Mary's last request, to tell me the truth when I was ready. I've lived with this weight for years, Michael said, and every night I saw your mother's face. I'm a coward, I ran. Yes, I am your father. But I can't demand forgiveness. I only want you to know who you are. Whether you do anything with that is up to you. I listened, unsure of what I felt. Anger? Relief? Emptiness? I remembered Mary writing letters at night so I would feel loved. I remembered Sam hiding her secret to protect her memory. I remembered Andrew, now as a man who died in our family's tragedy. I don't know if I can ever forgive, I told Michael. But I understand why Mom did what she did. She wanted to give me a childhood without pain. He nodded. I'll be here if you ever want to talk. If not, I'll accept that too. I stepped outside and breathed in the fresh air. The heavy stone pressing on my heart finally shifted. The truth was different from what I'd imagined, but it freed me from endless guesses. I returned home, hugged Ethan tighter, and decided to let the past stay in the past. But I will carry the memory of Mary, her sacrifices and her belief that a child deserves love, with me always. Now that you know our story, I want to ask you, viewers, what would you have done in Mary's place? Was she right to hide the truth to protect me, or does a lie always hurt? Is it worth digging up family secrets if they might cause pain? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if stories about love, mistakes, and forgiveness resonate with you, subscribe to our channel. We'll keep sharing truths, no matter how complicated, so everyone can find a piece of themselves in them.